I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Casino-Free Milford Citizens Participation Forum. Thank you all for coming. I'm John Seaver, and I'm the co-chair of Casino-Free Milford, and I also will be the co-moderator this evening with Steve Treadle, who is also the other co-chair of Casino-Free Milford. Go easy on us. You know, we're not Mike Nofree. We haven't been moderators before, but you know, we'll do our best. I'd like to ask everyone that has a cell phone or electronic device to please turn them off at this point. I'd also like to tell you that one of our speakers this evening, Selectman Chairman Bill Buckley, will not be joining us because his father-in-law passed away early this morning. So at this point, I'd like to have a moment of silence. We know that Bill really wanted to come here, and there is no question that Bill is here in spirit. I'd like to just take a brief moment to go over the agenda tonight, and then we'll get going. I know there's a baseball game going on in Boston that a lot of you are focused on, so we'll try to move it along pretty quickly. We have 4 speakers that are going to talk briefly about their perspective on the casinos, on the casino, and then they will return back here to the panel. After that, we will open it up to the citizen participation, where you can ask questions or make a statement. Now, we are limiting the questions to Milford residents only, okay, because we're the only ones that can vote. So that's one requirement. And we're also limiting each question or statement to 2 minutes so that everyone can get a chance to speak and be heard, so we can get back and, you know, watch the Red Sox as well. So having said that, I want everyone to understand, let's be polite to people that don't have the same opinion as you. Let's be courteous. We're going to hear both sides, and then obviously the election is on November 19th. So having said that, I'd like to turn it over to my co-moderator, Steve Treadle, who will introduce our speakers. Thank you, Dan.
Our first speaker is Tom Larkin. Tom is a licensed psychologist. He's worked in that capacity in the Boston school system. And he currently works with inmates at the Bill Ricker House of Corrections and with SMART addiction recovery groups in the community. Tom is going to speak to us from his hands-on experience about the social costs of gambling.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Steve. Thank you all for coming out. The gambling industry has spent millions of dollars, over $10 million to get this law passed, and several millions of dollars since it's been passed to focus on the benefits. There's really never been an independent cost-benefit analysis. What I'm going to focus on tonight are the costs. What are the costs? We understand there will be jobs and there will be economic development. The gambling industry exaggerates that and very rarely talks about the costs. And the costs are extensive. Beginning with economic costs. Where is this money going to come from? This is not new money that's going to fall down into Milford. According to prize-winning economist Paul Samuelson, gambling is a sterile transfer of money, creating no new money, absorbing time and resources, and subtracting from individual and government resources. The expansion of gambling revenue comes at the expense of other economic sectors. Some studies report a net job loss over time due to the shift of consumer dollars. In 2013, casino employees are being laid off all over the country. Let's take a look at Detroit, Atlantic City. Crime. Former Maryland Attorney General Joseph Curran stated, "There is no question in sites where gambling is being introduced, there is an increase in crime." FBI data demonstrates gambling attracts criminals. About 7% of non-gamblers have been incarcerated compared to 21.4% of active gamblers. And the cost has to do with policing, adjudication, incarceration, rehabilitation, and sedativism, child abuse and domestic violence. In Deadwood, South Dakota, after 2 years of casino gambling, child abuse cases increased by 42%, domestic violence by 80%. In one study, 50% of spouses of pathological gamblers have been abused. In Indiana, 72 children were found abandoned on casino premises during a 14-month period. Some studies conclude that gambling is as much a risk factor for domestic violence as alcohol is. Suicide attempts are higher among gamblers than any other addiction. Las Vegas has the highest suicide level in the country. In Atlantic City, abnormally high suicide levels appeared only after casinos were open. Bankruptcy. Of the 13 casinos in New Jersey, 8 have been involved in formal bankruptcy. Gambling is the fastest growing and 4th leading cause of bankruptcy. Never paid debts of gamblers are social costs for the rest of us. Youth gambling. Gambling is the fastest growing teen addiction, with their rate of pathological gambling twice that of adults. Many psychologists predict more problems with youth gambling in the next decade than with drug use. This is the first generation to grow up with computer video games in a government-sanctioned casino culture. Addiction. According to the National Gambling Impact Study Commission, about 30% of active gamblers have some level of gambling problem. And that population doubles within a 50-mile radius of new gambling sites. Addictions interact. Most people with gambling problems also have alcohol problems. Mental health and criminal behaviors are rarely isolated and often connected to gambling and drinking. About 30% of the incarcerated have gambling problems. Recidivism increases with the availability of gambling. Most gamblers, here's the final point I want to make, because I know we want to watch that World Series game. But the fact is that most people who gamble don't have a problem. But here's the key point. They don't lose very much. It turns out that about 80% of the money lost gambling comes from about 20% of the gamblers. And who are they? They are the less educated, the low income, minorities, the elderly, the formerly incarcerated, and returning veterans. Turns out 1 out of 5 returning veterans has some level of gambling problem. It's not isolated. They have substance abuse, post-traumatic stress. But the gambling is a piece of it. So the social costs of gambling easily exceed the cost of illegal drug problems. You know how much emphasis the state puts on illegal drug problems. So gambling correlates highly with tobacco use, depression, stress, heart attack, stroke, intestinal disorders, asthma, and automobile accidents. Now I've also got a bibliography supporting the points I made. Vinny Fratelli, my friend from Tewksbury, has a handout. I hope you'll all pick it up. Look at the bibliography, do some homework, and study this. Finally, our union leaders, legislators, town managers, board of selectmen, city councils, they're all honorable men, as Mark Anthony said. Sincere, conscientious. And let me quote from Martin Luther King. There is nothing more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Thank you.